All right, everyone. Net neutrality is basically, it's no longer the official policy. I'd like to address the fear-mongering that's going on because there's a lot of it. First and foremost, if the ISPs actually act up, it doesn't even require an act of Congress to reinstitute net neutrality. So, like, if things get bad, you realize how many people would protest if actual throttling occurred? The ISPs were free to throttle things in the past before net neutrality. Largely, they behaved because they realized, hey, mostly we have competition. There could be outcry. We probably don't maximize profit by pissing people off anyway. We might get gone after by the government and sued. Mostly they play nice. You know who's not playing nice? Social media firms. You're sitting there, you're worried about, access to information, free speech, free expression. You want to protect, like the tech firms, like literally, you want to protect corporations from other corporations. Who's going to protect people like me, independent individuals, from those same corporations that you're trying to protect? You're so worried about net neutrality, but I don't see anybody as nearly as concerned about the fact that you've got heavy-handed and encroaching censorship virtually internet-wide now. You have a steady degradation of the fabric of the internet as a juggernaut of free expression. Video hosting, books, even Amazon has gone after certain politically inconvenient topics now. They shouldn't do that. Why? What's the purpose? You should just ignore all these, pencil pusher NGO types that tell you anything that's mildly offensive must be banned. That's basically the way in which the internet's headed. Now, again, and I've pointed this out so many times now, I'm still optimistic about free speech prevailing on the web. I would even be optimistic eventually. Things get bad enough, we might have a constitutional amendment specifically to protect expression on the internet. Short term, though, it's going to be a fucking struggle. I see plenty of people gearing up for a fight with the ISPs, even though the ISPs haven't been abusing anybody. But I see very, very few people, and then only politically partisan groups usually, gearing up to fight censorship by the firms that encompass virtually the entire scope of the internet. Look, the internet at this point is basically Google, Amazon, eBay as a side to that. eBay is still pretty large. YouTube is a Google service, and Facebook and Twitter. That's a huge proportion of all the activity on the internet. All those services by those parent companies. The Instagram spin-off of Facebook. Blogspot, a Google service. You've got all of these different things. WordPress would be another big one. Most of these companies have begun to heavily censor and algorithmically manipulate material. Don't you think that if you want a free and open internet where people can express themselves, material isn't unduly throttled? What's the difference between the ISP decided to throttle a site and slow it down because it's not paying as much and you got to pay more to speed it back up or to gain access to a site? What's the difference between the fundamental principle of why you would oppose that, because you're being robbed of potentially looking at info you want to look at, and somebody who creates content and has fans on another site, an independent individual, being throttled by that site by being restricted, by being suspended, a temporary or permanent ban from using the sites, certain issues they're not allowed to talk about, certain things they're not allowed to write, certain pictures they're not allowed to post, certain services they're not allowed to offer? What's the fucking difference? There's no fucking difference. A handful of sites, about a half a dozen of them, control so much of the internet, they're basically monopolies. You're sitting there worried, well, they're ISP monopolies. There are some states where there's only one ISP. Unless you want to pay 10 times more for like satellite internet. Point taken, you're absolutely right. And we need to make sure those ISPs do not violate the spirit of a free market and free ideas and free speech and things like that. Yeah, of course we need to. We don't need net neutrality, by the way, to do that. The ISPs largely, they've been held in line by commercial forces. Who's going to, though, do that for the tech sites? Who's going to do that for the sites that a lot of us use to make a living now? We use it to disseminate information. Look, dissidents in foreign states, they use them too. What if these sites decide to crack down on that? What if Facebook had cracked down on the kind of material that was trading through accounts to spark the Tunisian counter-revolution there, where they warded off Islamofascism and maintained their general secularity? What about the student protests in Turkey? What about anything in the world? What about protests against the Chinese government, or protests against some, right-wing tin horn regime, honestly? Where is it going to get facilitated? The Western European states increasingly, foreign states, you're all worried as well about Russian propaganda. Russia's influencing domestic policy in the U.S. Look, yeah, foreign powers in Western Europe, Merkel especially, Merkel's, Gestapo agents are heavily leaning on tech firms that are based in the U.S. Doesn't that bother you slightly? That they're trying to censor U.S. users, their opinions, and the content that they make? You know why they're doing that? Because they can't compete handily. Because Germany's already heavily censored. So they want to get one up on us. That's exactly what's happening. Merkel wants one up on U.S. firms by making them less competitive, so that German firms will cater to German users more ably. That's what she wants. We shouldn't listen to her. Shouldn't listen to these people. So you're sitting there, you're telling me, oh, it's a big problem that net neutrality is repealed. Yeah, it could be, but that's way, way easier to take care of, trust me, than the problem of prevalent censorship that already is there and has been now for years on the big social media sites, video hosting sites, blog, WordPress and stuff like that. They're all censored. Every single one of these sites is censored. You're sitting there worried, well, 4chan will get taken. Jared Holt infamously oh, you think that the ISPs won't block a site like Poll? Poll is not a site. It's a page on 4chan. You do realize that. It's a page. It's not a website. It's part of a website. No, 4chan's not going to get fucked by the ISPs. Nobody wants to fuck with 4chan because it's troll central. It would solidify everyone of every political background on the site in unanimous desire for reprisal. It'd be a troll army like the world has never seen before. You thought like Chanology or something like that was impressive. Oh, you try to screw around with 4chan, see what it does to the ISP. It'll cripple them. It'd be hilarious. It'd be hilarious. I almost hope that they try. I hope they try to do it to Reddit too, so then you have the troll storm from there. Yeah, that far-right hate machine. No, Reddit's actually run by leftists, but okay. Yeah, I'm not too worried about net neutrality being repealed. It's far more of a fundamental problem for me, the censorship and algorithmic manipulation and throttling that happens on a lower level with the tech firms themselves, rather than the ISPs that, fundamentally, even Comcast, which has some of the worst, supposedly, customer service in the world, they never did anything to screw me over. I pay my fee and I go on the internet. That's what happens. No throttling. So the speed is slow in general in some cases, but there's no throttling of any individual sites. Meanwhile, I do have info throttled, but YouTube throttles info. There are people whose videos I want to watch that get banned or their videos get censored or something. I don't like that. Facebook, there are certain opinions that I can't patronize on Facebook because people get banned, people get suspended, they get stuff removed. Twitter, it's the same thing. People get shadow banned. People get banned permanently for, like Milo, he's not on Twitter. Sargon, he gets kicked off Twitter. For no reason, but they still get kicked off. That's a much, much bigger problem than the ISPs, in my opinion. If the ISPs, though, I'll say this, become problematic, I will be the first person to complain and say they need to be brought to heel. As Hillary Clinton would say, we need to bring them to heel, teach them who the master is. She used that in perhaps a racial context because she's a racist. I'm using it in a tech context, as in the power to the people in the most literal. I hate to use the cliche, like the Leninish sort of thing. I know I sort of look vaguely Leninish. Sorry about that, right wing. But yeah, literally it is power to the people. But that's the thing, you have to apply that to all the other tech firms too, not just the ISPs. It doesn't make any sense to say the ISPs can't fuck with anything, but, these other groups, the same people that are saying, well, those are public utilities, they'll say, oh, but Facebook, despite being totally monopolistic, that's a private company. They can censor what they want. It's because they're censoring different material. You're worried that they're going to censor, like, your opinions. So now you know how it fucking feels now, don't you? Oh, isn't that very, very funny? That's about all. Peace out.